minute. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello. Hi, I'm Alun from What's on Stage Theatre Club. This is Timothy Sheader, director of Jesus Christ Superstar. First of all, thank you for staying. We're going to crack on, and then we've got cast members coming on. So this is Cavin Cornwall, Nathan Amzi and Matt Cardle. Thanks for staying, guys.
Oh, pleasure.
Okay, well, I'm going to get the ball rolling, and Timothy, I want to ask you first of all. I've seen many productions of this show, but this is, I think, the most dramatic one I've ever seen, but also the one that most honours the fact that it originated as a record album. And I'd just like to ask you how you initially approached directing this show.
Yeah, hello. I had never seen Jesus Christ Superstar, so do we need these mics? We do need these mics, don't we? I had never seen it, so I was coming to it afresh, only having listened to the album. And it started really with Tom Deering, who's the music director, and I sitting down and listening to various versions, starting with the original Brown album, going all the way up to the version of the O2 a couple of years ago, and just identifying the differences in those versions and trying to understand, and also being sent the script. And we'd inquired about doing the rights for this show at Regent's Park for a long time, and it took a long time to negotiate them. And when we got them and I read the script, I slightly panicked and turned to my partner at work and said, oh, I'm not sure I want to do it anymore. Because there wasn't really a script, there was just this kind of list of songs, and that was quite daunting. But then when we went back to the album and listened to the album and understood, and very quickly we just understood that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to put the album on stage, and we wanted, crucially I think, to make no distinction between musicians, those that play instruments and those that are vocalists. And that it wouldn't just be some actors at the front and a band at the back, that somehow we would all be part, or musos at the back, somehow we would all be part of a band together. And I guess this became very important very quickly.
Right. So do we have some questions, ladies and gentlemen? Lady there.
Is there a mic or should I project? There was a little musical came out a couple of years ago called Hamilton, and that seems to have changed the game a little bit. Did you find that you were having to change your ideas a little bit so that it didn't feel like this was still 1970 compared to 2019?
I hadn't seen Hamilton or listened to the music when we started this. No, I have now, but when we made this I hadn't seen it or listened to the music. I purposely went to see Hamilton without having listened to the music. And I love Hamilton, but I'd not seen Hamilton when I started making this. So Hamilton had no effect on it whatsoever, but the second part of your question absolutely did. That it absolutely, I don't feel the album is dated, so at all. And I think that sometimes if you try to musical theaterize it, it becomes more dated. So I wanted to honour that period, but I wanted it to feel like the album still might have been... Really, I wanted it to sound like the artists had written their own music and that they were stepping forward and singing it for the first time.
Lady there.
Is it very much different directing it indoors than outdoors?
Is it different directing it indoors from outdoors?
That is a really good question. Still discovering that, really. Yes, because there's no daylight at the beginning. Things like Jesus on the cross, when that's outside with the trees and open sky, that's very different. Yeah, it is different because I think it had more of a festival vibe about it outside because it was louder and kind of slightly bigger, and you could see the sky and the lights were shooting up into the sky. So it's discovering how to put it inside and contained in walls without losing the DNA of the production, which I'm still discovering, to be honest. I watched the show tonight, having not seen it for 10 days, and had some quite big thoughts about that in terms of creating it for indoors, but without taming it too much. I think I've said enough now, and they should talk.
Cavin, I wanted to ask you actually, because you did the show in Regent's Park in the first run, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so how do you feel in terms of performing it? Do you notice a huge difference?
Yes, there's a vast difference between Regent's Park and then doing it indoors. From a technical standpoint, obviously we're indoors, we're kind of more into an intimate space. That I really like. I love this particular space because it feels much more intimate. We feel a bit more connected to the audience and my fellow performers as well. And obviously I lost certain appendages like my headdress and my glasses, but yes, there's a huge, huge difference between being outdoors and indoors. And I think for me the main thing, it's you feel that connection much more, and it's much more intimate. But as Tim rightly said, it's much more of a concert feel when you're outside. Indoors, I don't know whether you lose that or it lessens that in any way, but I think it very much makes up for the intimacy, being in this space.
Gentleman there.
Yes, a couple of points. Firstly, I saw the original show and the film. I'm trying to remember, am I right in thinking that the song I Don't Know How to Love Him it was only Mary Magdalene in the first version, but it's been with Judas singing, which I thought was really pretty effective, so slightly changed the meaning as well. Is that an additional with the sort of original writers sort of adding on? And the second point, which is a much wider point, do any of you have a Christian faith? And if you don't, then has being involved with this, has it sort of altered your attitudes towards the figure of Jesus at all?
Did you hear that, everyone? Yeah.
I'm afraid I can't. I'm looking to see if Tom Deering's arriving, who's the music director. I don't know the answer to your first point. Is that not on the record, the Judas singing, I Don't Know How to Love Him?
I don't think so.
It's been in every other version that I've seen.
It certainly wasn't added for this production, so it is in the score. Is it on the record? It is part of the Suicide, yeah. I can't, there are some, but you're right to identify there are slight differences to the film. The song that Mary, which is what I thought you were going to say, the song that Mary sings in the second half, Could We Start Again Please, was written for the film and is not on the Brown album.
As far as, I don't personally have a Christian faith. I forget which one it is, agnostic or atheist. I'm one of those. I think I'm the bad one of those. But I think being involved in it certainly hasn't changed my opinion on the story or whatnot. But what it has done is shed a lot of light on the story. You know, I was never, through not being of a Christian faith, I've never stuck my nose into the Bible and read it and read the story for how it was written in the first place. But seeing it played out like this from the inside out, is it's shed a lot of light on it. That's for sure.
I'd like to add a little bit more to that, actually, because I come from a very religious family, and I was kind of forced to go to church quite a lot, and a lot of the times I absconded from that and played football and did things that other boys did. And one thing about this production, having done it a few times now, is that it's put in such a way, religion in such an easy, digestible way. And this version in particular, what is so fantastic about it, it opens it up to the younger audience. It's very much a young person's show, and it kind of there's two things to this really, because there's a lot of purists that would like to see Jesus Christ Superstar done in a very, very specific way. I think this is probably, for me anyway, because I've done it a few times, one of the best versions I've ever done. because of that. It introduces Bible, Jesus Christ, in all faiths. I was in Chicago and had a little bit of intrepidation going to America and doing Jesus Christ Superstar over there because there's so many different religious states over there. And I thought, well, this could be interesting, can leave the stage door. And me being Caiaphas, a persuasion as I am, a dark fellow in America, doing Christ wrong. And I thought, wow, this could be interesting. But it was very, very interesting because I was faced with Orthodox Jews, Christians, of people of all faiths, all together, and enjoying, loving the show. And that, I had a conversation with probably about 5 different faiths, all in one instance, they absolutely adored it. So I thought, this is amazing because it brought people together in a very, very small way.
It was, Cavin and I did the show in a very large opera house in Chicago last year, and a lot of that cast had a very strong faith. And I particularly remember the Simon Zealotes song, rehearsing that. The guy that played, Michael, that played Simon, and the 3 soul girls were all church leaders. And so that had a massive influence on that, on their understanding and their joy of that particular song, and the way they presented it.
Gentleman over there's got a question.
Yeah. This is maybe for you, Tim, and maybe for you, Matt, as well. The risk, perhaps, of combining the singing and the playing. For example, when Jesus came out to do Gethsemane and had his guitar, I thought. So, Robert, this might be a good question for you as Jesus. I was just asking you about when you come out to sing a song as big as Gethsemane, and you've got to throw your whole life into it, and you've got to play the guitar faultlessly. Is there a risk involved? I mean, you totally blew it out the park. It was absolutely extraordinary.
Thank you.
But just I'll admit, when you came on with the guitar, I thought, ooh, how's this going to
be? It's coming. I wonder what he's going to do.
It's an amazing song, which you have to give everything to. So I'm wondering what it's like having to play guitar faultlessly as well.
Absolutely. I think.
Did everybody hear that? Sorry, Robert. Did you hear that? Basically, the gentleman, it's not your fault, you haven't got a mic. The gentleman down here is just asking about the risks of putting together the singing, the acting, and the playing of the instruments. So, sorry, Robert, as you were.
There's definitely that momentum in feeling a natural anxiety and being told you're going to be singing this number 8 shows a week to an audience that know the number, most likely, and know what to expect from that number. And I think, sure that at the very beginning, I think that definitely sparked a lot of natural kind of pressure to be like, okay, you can do this. But the number kind of lends itself to, like you were saying about throwing your whole life at it, there's only one way to do that song, and you learn that through Tim and through this, this version as well, in particular, with a guitar in my hand, and it's quite an incredible experience actually to be able to figure out how to throw yourself into that, because at first I was like, this number is a beast, and now it's actually, I really enjoy singing it every night, and it makes me, there's something coming off stage after that number, there's a release that feels quite nice, and an achievement as well, of course, if you like it. And so definitely there is that kind of pressure, but that kind of fuels the number anyway. I mean, as an actor, you use what's given to you, and if I'm feeling anxious, and they're all natural things to be feeling in that moment anyway for this number. And so it tends to be on side no matter what, which makes the song hard to fail if you do put everything in. There's only kind of one way to do it, so I hope that answers your question.
Can I just say, you were all extraordinary.
Thank you.
Do we have another question? Lady there? Smashed it.
What you brought to Regent's
we have any more questions? Gentleman there.
I just had a question. First of all, as the American in the room, I'm sorry you felt that way coming. My question is about how you created the visual vocabulary that you used throughout the show, from the microphone cords through the microphone stands and the glitter and all of that metallic paint and everything. I've never seen anything like it, so I wondered if you could speak about how you created that vision.
Yeah, the microphones came first, and so that we wanted it to feel like a staging of the album or a gig theatre, I guess, and that these felt very important and continue to feel very important. And we did a bit more work on these microphones this time round, about the passing of them and the struggle to get it and to be heard, and that felt that came very naturally in the design process, that this would carry all. I guess you sit down as a director with director design and think, what are the big building blocks needed, and his suicide becomes is one of the first to address, and that very quickly became the idea of the microphone, his voice being taken from him and losing the microphone. So that then the extension of that was that the cross would be a speaker stand, and that we would hang his microphone off the side of that, and that they would be, and then you just start to riff and think how that might permeate the show, and that he would be bound with the mic leads, and that they would be, struggling to use that to keep this sound. The gold, which I think has become the kind of biggest emblem of the show, was started with that we really worked on the lyric "He's a man, he's just a man," and kind of slight in answer to that question as well. That if you do have a faith, people have said to me that what they enjoy about this piece of theatre, Jesus Christ Superstar, is that they can see Jesus Christ as a man rather than a prophet or a religious icon. So the gold came from, the journey of the gold was from "He's a man, he's just a man" to him becoming a man that is covered in gold, that we might wear around our necks on a little cross, or that we might worship a gold man on a gold cross in front of us. So we started from that this thing would light up gold, and then Tom Scott, the designer, very brilliantly came up with this idea very early on of throwing glitter for the lashes, so that we would see this deification of this man from this carpenter from Galilee. He's not from Galilee, is he? Is he from Galilee? Nazareth. And then Tom got slightly obsessed with gold and adds more gold every time we do it. So there's now all this gold falling down from the ceiling because we've got a ceiling to drop gold. Judas's hands came pretty much after that, and we're going to do the show in America in a few weeks, and the producers wanted to try and do it without an interval, which I think is quite interesting. But I'm not quite sure how to do the Judas's hands going into the silver paint, and then he has to do the Last Supper with silver paint dripping everywhere, so I'm just trying to solve that at the moment. I share that with you because we don't want to cut the silver paint, because that was a very early decision, so that's it really, apart from the fact that Tom does literally keep throwing gold at it every time we revisit it. It's touring. So we're opening in Texas, in Austin.
Never mind.
Is the production returning to the open air in Regent's Park?
No, this is it now.
Lady there.
Yeah, I just wondered if you felt that there was more of a connection to the band because they're on stage rather than being in the film.
Do you feel more of a connection to the band because they're on stage?
Yes, we do, absolutely. It makes the vision that Tim and the creative team had of being born out of the album makes it more easy for us, being a part of it, and they're just communicating with us and us with them. So definitely
having also done a lot of musical theatre, all of us, a lot of the time what happens is in a rehearsal room is you have a rehearsal piano for all of the rehearsals, and then you come in, you do a sitz probe, the cast hear the band for the first time, you're like, oh, this is awesome, and then you move on. But then I think, like we were talking about before, the music being so very important in this, we were lucky enough to have the band in rehearsal. So we started to gel then, and then we were like a band, and we had little rules like, you know, don't record the music on your dictaphone to figure out what your harmony is, because you wouldn't do that if you were in a band. You just all get together and jam, so you learn it, you know, so it's in your blood.
You jam it out.
You've got some, talk about the microphones, you've got some pretty remarkable equipment there, because they took a header a couple of times, and presumably they still carry on working. But one of the questions my friend here wanted to ask was very interesting to director here, how you set the temple, and it wasn't all different merchandise, it was just the using crosses, wasn't it? That was an interesting, what's behind that conception?
Yeah, I guess when you kind of presenting it in this concert-like way and taking the naturalism out of it and not staging each scene naturalistically, you get to scenes like that and you can't start to break your own rules, really. So it was a no-brainer that we wouldn't be doing, bringing out lambs to slaughter and everything else. I mean, I love what they do in the movie there, with it's their tourists, aren't they? And they're looking at postcards on a carousel and things. I think there's arms as well. So we just thought our stage is this fallen cross, that we would fill the stage with as many crosses as possible. As the set has got bigger coming inside, so you can see there are more crosses in the girders of the set as well. Up at the top was a third level. So it was just that we wanted to. It was almost. I suppose I see the whole piece as a conversation that Jesus is, as well as Judas is asking us a question and asking Jesus a question. Jesus' journey is he's signed this contract. He's going to sing Gethsemane. He's already told God what he's going to do. So it's constantly reminding him of his future. It's almost like a prophecy. And again, that they would be. Maybe this is interesting. I don't know how other people do it, but you've got to be all these moneylenders and sellers in the temple, and then 2 seconds later you've got to be a leper. That's what that song is called, that follows temple. And I don't know how you get people changed in time to do that. So that was another practical thing of sitting down. How would we do that? I think he's done it brilliantly, Tom Scott, because he said we're going to cover them in gold glitter. It took quite a while at Regent's Park to discover this in previews, and then we're going to cover them in ash, and all of this is done incredibly. Well, they might tell you how it's done really quickly backstage, rather chaotically, so that they can then become the people in the lepers, as if they're burnt out. So I guess we saw it as being that they were bankers potentially in temple, and then they were burnt out, and they were maybe going to an ashram or they were going to ask for forgiveness, or they have to have their souls healed. That's where the costumes came from. Yeah.